Hello everyone, this is Brand Newman. You may know me from the English translations I've released for several Japanese exclusive games on Wii. A few days ago, I tweeted a survey about whether I should make this video despite my very noticeable accent. And based on the answer I got, well, let's say viewers brought it on themselves. I apologize in advance, and I swear I'm doing the best I can. And this video has subtitles anyway. Now, I must admit I love the Wii. This is the console that brought me back to video games after college, ever since my sister convinced me to try the Wii balance board. And while I didn't really keep up with the exercise, I discovered a console with such innovative controls for the time that they still define the hardware more than 16 years later. Of course, one can argue that motion control was sometimes gimmicky or imprecise, especially when a button could have done just as well. But the feature could be a lot of fun or add a lot of depth when used wisely. I mean, there's a reason why Resident Evil 4 on Wii is still considered the best version, or all games do so well with the pointer control. Hey look! That's a game I translated you just saw there! But whether you're a fan of motion control or not, there's a certain category of games that has actually suffered a lot from it. And that's the one that had their gameplay ruined by motion control. Not the games that could have been better without, not the ones that people wished they had classic controls, but games that would cause frustration, boredom, or rage quit because the motion control actually came against gameplay. Just a quick reminder before I get to the list. These are games I personally thought were worsened by motion control, despite having good premise, but if you liked them and could get past the control or even appreciate these controls, well, that's just fine. After all, I myself have even completed most of them. Remember, this is all about personal opinions, and I'd actually be glad to read about yours in the comment section. And now, without further ado, let's move to the first game on the list. Number 1. Rampage Total Destruction. This is sort of a sequel of a game I used to play a lot on my Amstrad CPC, so I was obviously filled with high expectation on this one. The game is like a spoof of these big monsters movies, except that the player actually gets to be King Kong or Godzilla and wrecks havoc these towns with big buildings in them. This might sound repetitive, but it can be a lot of fun, and the extra content of the original and Nintendo 64 games surely was a nice touch. The controls were okay for the most part, at least they didn't make the mistake of assigning basic moves to tilting the Wiimote. But when motion controls do become mandatory, that's when the quality really plummets. I couldn't hit people for my life, and since some achievements depended on it, I couldn't unlock what must have been easy to unlock on GameCube and PlayStation 2. I know the Wii has exclusive content, and it pains me to say so, but the overall consensus on the internet seems to be that players should stick with the 6th generation version. Number 2. Counterforce. Another very arcadey game that isn't meant to provide anything more than guilty pleasure for small sessions. Yet the game is made almost unplayable by the mind-blowing decision to assign directions to both joystick and motion control of the nunchuck. What could have been an okay-ish shooter, holding a strong resemblance with game of the Dreamcast, ends up being a torture when you have to constantly maintain your nunchuck on a perfect horizontal position, unless you want to continuously drift away while avoiding all the bullets coming to you. Once again, a missed opportunity that could easily have been fixed by making the motion control directions optional. Number 3. Onechanbara Bikini Zombie Slayers. I don't know about you, but I can really appreciate a splatter film like Brain Dead once in a while, as long as humor tones down what I see on screen. Onechanbara surely is generous on blood, and while the story is basic and badly told, the premise of half-naked girls fighting zombies with their blades caught my attention more than I should say. But while using movements to slay your swords sounds perfect in theory, it quickly becomes obvious brawler games should stick to the button formula. Not only will your arm get exhausted by this Waggle feast, but I can't really decide whether the control is incredibly precise or inaccurate based on the difficulty I had to perform any of the special attacks. And what is worst is that some monsters can only be beaten by them, leading you to try over and over again before you can go out of these arenas, which by the way come back anytime you teleport to the save game room. Lots of other things can be said against the game, but the fact that battles are so exhausting you will end up trying to avoid them really feels like the last nail in the zombie's coffin. Number 4. Sonic and the Secret Rings. So far we've seen games that can be qualified as budget titles. But when it comes to Sonic and the Secret Rings, we are talking about one of the biggest stars of video games and the first game of the franchise to come to the brand new Wii at the time. The software is actually a racing game in disguise. Sonic runs constantly unless you tilt the remote, has a horrendous break distance before you level up and buy new items, making the whole experience rather stressing, especially in parts that require you to stop and act with precision. That's a pity because, as I said, the game is not a budget title and it shows. Pre-rendered cutscenes are beautiful, even on today's standards, graphics are quite good for an early game, and while music might not be everybody's cup of tea, some tunes really stand out. The motion control got heavily criticized even by the time, which led its sequel to control a little bit more like a normal game, but that didn't make Black Knight any better. Poor Sonic. Seems like the Storytale series was doomed from the start. Number 5. Cursed Mountain. Our final game was released on multiple platforms, but the Wii version really caught my attention because you could use motion control to perform mantras on spirits. First chapters of the game are probably the best. They succeed in creating an eerie atmosphere, have decent camera angles that will sadly get fewer and fewer by the end, and the combats are easy enough that the controls don't get in the way. However, as soon as you have to push the nunchuk forward to complete your mantra, the game fails so many times in detecting your move that battles with spirits become chores, and that's just about when the game starts to be more generic and less intriguing. It's a pity, considering how good pointer can work with horror games, and the Himalaya sure is a welcomed change of scenery. Alright, this is all I have for today. Time for me to go back to translating my latest project. If you liked that video despite the execution, or are interested in my translation job, please feel free to subscribe as I semi-regularly publish about my projects, which you can know all about in the description below. As for me, it was an amusing thing to do, although the amount of time and work made me have a whole new level of respect for people who do that for a living. I hope you had a good time, and I wish you a very nice day finding out about Japanese exclusives.